as coaches, we have, like you said, you put down your principles of play or you make your game model. And sometimes you have to be careful you don't get so caught up in just not after that growth mindset where in college, this is more of your lifestyle. Like us as coaches would eat up the content, love it, love the ideas behind it. Then when we went back to our audience, we're using the terminology. They're looking at us like, Coach, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Hello and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. I hope you're well and I hope you've been enjoying the recent episodes that have been released. But in this week's episode, I'm delighted to welcome head coach Frank Carrozza. It was great to speak to Frank as previously I spoke to his assistant coach Courtney Browning a few weeks ago. It was great because this is the first time that I've spoken to an assistant coach and a head coach having a full understanding about their program, how they work to support each other, and what they really take and enhance to support their program and their players within their playing principles and framework. Now, it was great to gain that understanding and insight from Courtney, how she works with Frank and what Frank does for her. So it was great to build those two different perspectives to build that full picture, which is great for you as listeners to build that enhancing position of learning from one episode to the next and building that great picture. It was great to speak to Frank because he had a real insight about his framework and how he delivers this as a head coach and what he brings with his experience and his work with Courtney and mentoring her and giving her that coaching support. Frank is very good on social media, especially Twitter, sharing a lot of his session plans, and it's great because as you understand his playing principles and what they do in their team and their program, Courtney backs that up with a theory, and therefore you're able to have a full understanding of how they deliver their program and the way it works. Now, Frank really touched upon the Tovo Academy. It was fantastic to hear about how he instills certain particulars from the Tovo Academy into his style of play, how he enhances various experiences, his thoughts, his processes, what he takes away from Courtney, how he explores and develops the game further, his continued learning and adaptability, and how he consistently applies this into moving forward as a coach, but then enhancing his framework and style of play, whereby he can take bits of segments from various playing principles, his learning, and apply this into ensuring that his game plan is continuously evolving and staying up to date with the game. That's a real learning outcome for you as coaches, as well as a great objective in terms of a reflection that you should really have about you and how you enhance your game as well. It was so great to speak to Frank, and it's so great to see what he does on his social media and what he really does at LSV with Courtney. They're doing such great work and they're delivering amazing insights into their program and really enhancing and working with their players, whereby the program is going to be so successful year upon year, which it already has been because of the great work that they're doing as such wonderful individuals. I've taken to them both so much, and I love seeing what they do on social media, and I love how they complement each other. That is huge success in itself, and it's a huge compliment to them as well, because to be in that position where you're so lucky to have a great head coach and a great assistant and have that synergy, this is such a great time for them to be together, and one that I hope that they can both take away and live with for life, because whether Courtney goes off and becomes a head coach herself at some point, which would be a fantastic route for her, or whereby in the game she might transition somewhere else, because you never know what's going to happen in the world. But right now here, I want them to harness what they have, because it is so life-giving, so life-longing, and a real experience to have. But back towards the episode, it was great because when we looked at the outcomes of this episode, what does success look like? What are good people and how do you develop good people? The grass isn't always greener, and that's a great message about where players can maybe move on, how this could look, the thought processes. Do we follow trends or do we observe them? I absolutely love this question and this observation from Frank. It was a real brain-warming exercise, this conversation, because it was the conversation that when Frank was saying something, I was taking so much away from it and really thinking about it, and I hope that you do too. And that shows the great work that they're doing as well as what Frank is. Creating your own framework, coaching terminology and how this may look, instilling it in your players, within your program, how you may need to give information across, and then really helping your players understand how can we reach and develop even further. How can we support players to become better? We look at groups and familiarization. We look at groups and facilitation, learning styles and outcome, questioning and its importance, the players understand and assessment, some real key outcomes, some real key considerations for you to take away. We look at growth mindset within this, and there are so many great quotes and insights which I can't wait to keep clipping up and sharing with you because of the important insights of Frank. There are some key questions. Do they absorb it? Do they understand it? There are pitfalls, there are downfalls. How do you identify? This could be in your program. How do you identify as a player? What are your playing principles? But how do you identify and understanding what good people are and how they can become good people? And that relates then to that growth mindset and that lifestyle whereby they work on and off the pitch. And as you heard in Courtney's episode, how she supports the players too, really complimenting Frank. And those changes and those trends and those observations, do they have an impact on that growth mindset? Are they supportive? And how do you support your players within doing that? How can we reach the audience to be better? And that could be in terms of the entire stakeholder commitment and investment into that program and how Frank talks about that. We talk about groups and facilitation, external factors and impacts, expectations, appraising, decisions, indicators, the why, and enjoying your presence. There is so much in this episode, and I know Frank couldn't wait to get it released. And I've already had quite a few inquiries about when this episode is released. So here it is today, and I'm so glad to welcome Frank Carrozza on the episode, and it was great to have both him and his assistant on. But right now, this is his episode, and I took so much away from you, Frank. I really appreciate your time on the podcast, and I know this is going to be well listened to and reach such a great audience because I have so much respect for you, as I do for all my guests, and I'm so lucky to speak to each and every one of you. Within this week, I've had many conversations around life itself, and even last night I was talking to some players that I was coaching and managing, and I was just having life discussions and really talking about the American game. And I've been so wonderful and lucky to meet so many amazing people from America, whereby all these episodes are so insightful. You are truly, truly amazing. But that also goes for the British coaches and other coaches beyond that who I've spoken to. But in terms of that, in the American game, I've been so lucky right now. And I just wanted to touch upon the continuous commitment from all of you. You can find the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Flickr, TikTok. It's across many different socials. On Twitter, it's at TRC Podcast _. As you can see on screen, I'm Anthony _Luca. The key areas and or platforms to listen to is going to be Spotify and YouTube, as well as Podcast Addict and following on Twitter. Drop that follow, drop that like, drop that subscribe, leave a comment. It does really help. Really, really do. Please leave those follows and those subscribes. It really does help the podcast. This has been such a wonderful episode, and I love listening to it back. Thank you from me again, Frank. But as my audience, I hope you enjoy this episode because it is such a wonderful insight. From me, enjoy, continue to add to your journal, add to your notes. Don't forget to drop that like, that subscribe, and that follow. This is Coach Luca on the Reflective Coach Podcast with Frank Carrozza.
Build a relationship, they'll run through walls for you. If you just try to teach them the skill set, they don't really care why they're doing it or where and when they're going to try to do it. It's on their terms. But if you make that connection with them, they'll get it. They'll understand the why. They'll want to go do it. How are you, Coach?
Yeah, I'm good. You okay?
Very good, very good. Can't complain.
That's good to hear. Nice and early where you are in the morning then?
Yes, it is 9:58 right now, so it's not too bad. How about you guys?
Yeah, it's just coming up 3 o'clock in the afternoon here, so it's all right. Beautiful day here in the UK. Stunning.
Good deal, good deal.
I had one coach message me back a couple of hours ago, and I was like, "What's the time where you are?" He's like, "Oh, it's only like 5 a.m. in the morning." I was like, "What are you doing up still?" I was like, "I didn't expect to hear from you for a few hours."
Some people are night owls, and I guess some people are those morning day people. I'm definitely not the morning person.
No, I'm not. I'm wide awake late at night, so it's great for when I connect with coaches across the other side of the world. Sometimes when I do go to sleep, I do get the odd message come through in the night. So sometimes we just have that overlay of when we end up meshing each other.
Yeah. Very good, very good.
So
what's new and exciting over there?
New and exciting. Well, it's starting to come up pre-season for us, and we're just getting back in preparation. So our club started training last week, Tuesday, Thursday. So our 16s are now stepping up the seniors, which is the adult game. So for them now, it's part of a new journey, not only being under 19s, but they get to try and fit in the seniors as well. So they can have up to 6 contacts a week now, and up to 3 games. So obviously stepping up as a 16-year-old and playing with, say, like a 35-year-old, 42-year-old, and so on. Massive step up for them, but really exciting times for us. And with our 19s now, we all return on the 5th, which gives that sort of 2-3 week period for the 16s just to step up and then get back in a full swing before they have a full schedule. So exciting times for us. How about you?
Yeah, things are ramping up same way as you guys. It sounds like you're definitely a little busier than we are with multiple teams over there. But same thing. I mean, we're counting down the days for preseason. The team comes back, I believe it's August 18th. So it's funny, as soon as they get out with graduation, you basically turn around and say, as they're walking out the door, here's your workout packet. I'll see you in about a month and a half. So same thing though. We're excited about it. So I hate the off season. It's like slow. It's a little bit down. So it's nice to be able to be active again.
Absolutely, but for us, it's literally our end of season has literally been like, right, here it is, bang, straight back into it, because our head coach was saying, who's the seniors manager, he was saying where they used to have off season, he would do like a full summer of cricket and then allow him to come back in and manage the team then. So then same for the players, they could go and do cricket, their baseballs and so on. But he's saying the turnaround is so short, they can't even sign up to play cricket or whatever because it's such a quick turnaround.
I'm sure there's not as many crossover athletes then, I'm guessing, since the seasons are so tight.
Yeah. So we're in America, I've spoken to quite a few coaches. They're saying they have that great skill set because they're doing so many sports and whatnot. Whereas here in the UK, it's now starting to become very tight. So we're seeing youngsters give up, multiple sports very quickly and going, right, I'm going to dedicate myself to football from the age of 7 straight away. And then by the time, say, they're 14, 15 and may have dropped out the academy or they've been released or might quit for whatever reason, they haven't got that skill set to sort of jump straight into, say, basketball for whatever and play basketball as good. So they've got the skills to sort of go, right, resilience and so on and all of that, but they don't have, like, where they've experienced it and can pick it up straight away, for example.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah,
well,
busy times, and that's the thing with coaching. So for you, would you want your athletes to have that multi-purpose, say, various sports over summer in their downtime?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone kind of both ways. I think when I first started coaching, I was under a mindset like you want the player all the time because you feel like if you have them all year and all the time, like you can do so much more with them. But there's so many positives to playing other sports. I mean, just the motor skills, the functions, your range of motion, all that stuff comes out when you're doing other sports. I don't see a downside to it. Like, I get it. We selfishly want the player all the time, but I think there's good stuff that comes out of playing other sports for sure.
And so when you get a player on a scholarship then, so could they have a 2-year scholarship, 2-3 years, is it?
So for us, we're Division III, so we basically don't have scholarships at all from the
Right.
From the athletic side of things. Yeah.
So, because sometimes, where they are on scholarship, obviously they have that contract in place maybe, well, here in the UK we do. So, therefore, the athlete are prevented from doing any other sport. So, for like our professional clubs, so in the downtime they might have summer off, they wouldn't be able to do any other contact sports on the basis that they've got a contract in place. So, that's another sort of frustration in the route of an athlete here in the UK.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's definitely pros and cons to it. You bring up some valid points. Like we have our goalkeeper is also on the women's basketball team. And it's nice because it's after our season, but at the same point, stuff that always goes through your head as the coach is, you don't want him to get hurt, but you want him to have a good experience. So, I mean, same thing for us. We had the goalkeeper hurts her ankle. She's out basically all winter, goes in the spring season. We don't have her in the spring season until the tail end. So, I mean, it gives you the nerves and you're like, you want that person with you. But at the same point, we go through college once, and if that's the experience that person wants, who am I to say you can't do that? So I get it. You're on both sides of the coin.
Absolutely. But great repetition for her then in terms of playing basketball, because you could go and play a variation of a sport, say baseball and whatever. Yeah, you are catching and hitting the ball and whatnot, but basketball is constant catch, throw, pass. And so for a goalkeeper, that's fantastic repetition in that sense.
Yeah, it worked out well. She enjoyed it. She went from, it's funny, she was the manager the year before, and then I guess a couple players got hurt the following year, and they were like, hey, you might be able to help us out. And she was able to slide into the squad and be able to be on the official team after that. So she enjoys it. And like you said, it gives you some nice skills of the constant catching and passing. And it equates perfectly into what you do as a goalkeeper when you're making saves by hand and distribution. Mm-hmm. So it's cool to be able to see them blossom in other areas when they have that chance.
Absolutely, and I agree. So in terms of, obviously, the last season's been gone and you're preparing for this season now, will you take a big factor of last season and use it to build on for next season in your preparation? Or do you sort of shut off and then go, right, new season and we go again?
It'll be interesting because for me, it's a different experience. I just moved into a new role at a new school. It was last June. So I basically went straight into a new position, right into that preseason, right into that season. There was a smaller group that came in as recruits or as freshmen, and then there was a large group that was leaving at the end of that season. So it was just kind of a whirlwind for me because you're getting used to new players, they're getting used to you, a new school and how it runs, and then kind of dealing with a large group graduating that, are they going to buy into what you want to do? Are they going to be good leaders knowing it's their last year? So there was just a whole lot going on. I'm excited about it because I think the returning group enjoyed what we were trying to implement last year. Things that seemed like were a little bit more organized the way they would like them. So things went well. So I'm trying to hopefully build off of the success we had last year. We have a couple more resources, some coaches that came in, recruiting with new players. So it's exciting. I don't think it ever really stops. You feel like your brain never stops with recruiting and everything else. But yeah, it'll be, you have to at some point turn it off, I feel like. And now I'm like, okay, turn it back on. We got to go again.
And it's great because you've got this new season to look forward to, as you said. You've got all these different variables which can be really exciting. So, planning and preparing for the season ahead and starting fresh and going, right, we've got the new year to go. This is how we're going to implement things. This is our strategy and how it looks. It's a very exciting time for you in terms of what you're going to do, Frank.
Yeah, definitely. Last year it was crazy because I was taking a coaching course that was like a 8 to 10 month course at the same time as taking over the team. So when you look at it, you're like, it's not ideal timing, but at the same point, it was kind of a fun experience because what you're learning, you can turn around and try to apply right away. But then you have the lovely balance of, do you want to apply it now for the course, even though it may change from what you're doing with your team in the season? So it was a lovely ball of stress for a little while there, but it makes you better at the end.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And I was very similar when I done my UEFA B. So, it's great because by the time I got to the end of doing that assessment, I was like, I'm already in that practice for it. And how then do I continue that in terms of what I was doing in club? So it ended up being a nice transition and it was good. But it's difficult then because you're suddenly stopping and going, oh, do I have to suddenly change the way I deliver? Or they're expecting this and they're saying this. You're like, oh, I've never thought. So it's kind of interesting, and it's kind of putting you on the spot as well of what you're doing, and then you start to question yourself. But it's all positivity, I think, and trying to build that all-round full circle of who we are, essentially.
Yeah, it was funny. I love the fact you're talking about trying to find identity, because I kind of feel like that's what we kind of were doing when I moved from one school to the other, and then you're going through those different ways of teaching. I really enjoyed the methodology from Tovo, and it was a branch off of some Spanish methodology and some Dutch methodology. And then when you're going into your course and you're learning some Scottish methodology, it's kind of like it's a whirlwind because you're like, I love pieces from all of it, and we're heavy concentrated in, say, Tovo, but how do we apply some of these new things? It's fun. I'm a content junkie, so for me, everybody loves courses and they're like, oh, it's about the paper and I got to get the license. I was like, me, I love the content. If you can steal things here and there and it just makes the wheels turn, that's the stuff I'm after. I just enjoy the content.
100%. I remember looking back at some of our UEFA conference, which we have here in Wales, and I was just watching some of the content back, and it was just on a Friday night, and I was like, whoa, suddenly your head's going and you're thinking different things. And it wasn't even then to, get that certification at that point, because it's just, we have to do it every 3 years to continue to make sure it's up to date, and then it applies for another 3 years to a conference and so on. But just watching it and getting yourself in that mindset of seeing the sessions and the way they're delivered, you're like, I wouldn't be on the grass tomorrow doing this with the players.
Definitely. I love the interaction with the other people in a course too. I think that's one
Mm.
of the biggest takeaways for me is the other people you meet and the stories that you get a chance to kind of listen to is you might not have some of those experiences if you're not at the
Mm.
course or if you're not, say, at a convention. So, I mean, the people that you meet, you run into, I mean, other than it's great networking experiences, I mean, just the stories and the experiences you have, it's awesome. It's tough to replicate that outside of the courses.
Absolutely. So now going into the new season itself and setting up, do you go in with a set objective going, right, I want, say, 3 objectives for this year and this is what we have to achieve? Or do you sort of go, right, one objective and sort of see how you go? Or do you set no objectives? How does that look for you?
I think we kind of do it in phases. Like I'll do a piece of that with the team, and then I do a piece of it kind of quietly with the staff on our own. For us with the team, I mean, our ultimate goal is let's develop in the non-conference. We're lucky enough the way our schedule's set up. The first month and a half is considered like non-conference play, and then we have the last month and a half that's conference play. So, and whether it's right or wrong, I use that first month and a half as let's get our principles of play down. Let's understand what we're trying to do. We move a lot of people to different positions to figure out can you add double value? Can you fill in different areas and bring a different aspect to us? And then from that standpoint, then with the staff, it's okay. Now, beginning phase preseason, we got to get our methodology understood. Let's get it down. Let's get the wheels going, touching the ground. Halfway through the season, it's now we got to start producing. We ironed out the kinks in non-conference. Now it's do or die. We got to start winning games in conference, and then it's let's make playoffs, and then after that, let's make some history. So it's definitely a combination or a hybrid. But I think for me, the thing I've appreciated and understood and really started to hone down on the last couple of years is it. For me, it was the delivery of the material from me to the kids.
Mm.
It's I had all these goals set in mind, but at the same place, it's you can't get there if you're not doing a quality job of teaching.
Mm.
And I think that's something from just a maturity standpoint I started to realize is you can have all the content, all the trophies, all the wins, all the best players in the world, but at the same point, if you're not a good facilitator of the material, if you can't communicate clearly, I feel like your team is always going to have those bits and pieces where they're off the rails.
Mm.
So we've been really trying to just narrow that down, make it simplistic, be able to have a language where we can communicate since we're different age ranges, and just quality education of it. I know that might be different than other people. Like I know college, it's you got to win. Some places are you have to win to keep your job. Others are, hey, we're not here for development. That's youth. We want to win trophies or
Mm.
tournaments. That's just my method with it. Is first half, let's develop. Second half, now we got to get after it.
Mm. And I think that's great the way that you sort of describe it, and that combination of putting it all together and having that over a period of time. Because some coaches might say, right, these are set objectives and they have to be achievable. So nothing is interchangeable. So we have to put these at the forefront and prioritize them. And even if we start to fail in one area, we have to try and look at getting there. And then sometimes they're sort of shooting themselves in the foot because they've set up objectives and then they're a stickler to them over the sense of the season. But they haven't really adapted, and therefore it can hit the confidence of, say, the players you're working with, because it's like, well, realistically, we haven't achieved this. We're not working towards this. And then they're not really looking at what the successful outcomes might be because they're too honed in on what they're not achieving. And then it can be difficult then for the overall environment. And then that's where the environment can start to collapse in that sense.
I think 100% with you on that. I mean, it's crazy. I think us as coaches, we have, like you said, you put down your principles of play or you make your game model, and sometimes you have to be careful. You don't get so caught up in just checking the boxes. Like, okay, we taught today opposite movement, great. Tomorrow we got to make sure back foot receive and checking them off. Like, okay, I did it. Well, it's not just a checklist. It's do they absorb it? Do they understand it? Can we apply it? And I think sometimes we just get so caught up in we got to get this game model down where like the game model doesn't happen or doesn't work if you can't have the foundation of it. So it's tough. I mean, throughout the season, you go on a lot of side quests, and it's funny because my assistant loves to say that because we both kind of have a short attention span. We got the whole ADD thing, so we always call them side quests. But that's what happens in your season. You go from preparing and taking care of your game model to now all of a sudden say your leadership and how you're operating isn't the right way. Now all of a sudden your focus might be we need to do a little bit more of the leadership side of things and maybe not less of soccer, but put the emphasis more on the leadership and the collective. So you always have those so-called side quests that pop up. It's just a matter of, hey, don't worry about checking boxes. It's what do we need right now so we can keep focused, we can keep growing, we can keep getting ourselves better. It's a double-edged sword. You get frustrated and you're like, well, we got to win. But at the same point, you got to take yourself back out of it and be like, they have to understand things for us to be able to win. So it's tough. You're constantly back and forth.
Absolutely, and I love that analogy in that sense where you have those side quests because it's so true, and that's where coaching is. Because over the course of the season you might plan out and have those objectives and say strategy and that calendar of things, but suddenly by 2 months in and you're hitting say November or October, you're like, all right, suddenly this player's left or this player's come in or our coaching staff has left, and everything then starts to change. Even though you've put everything in place, and then one that domino sort of falls, and then that whole process can really have that impact. So suddenly your strategy might change, or how you implement things, or the way you work with groups, or time in a group. There's so much which plays into coaching, and no matter how much planning, it's not always 100% perfect plan. But I absolutely love that side quest, and even side quests in terms of that personal journey that you're on, for example, because come December you might have someone else knocking on your door going, do you know what, fancy the job over here? And then if for you, then it's like, right, how do I think about this? How do I approach it? How does this look on the group? And honestly, coaching is the most difficult thing in the world that we can be in, both personally and professionally, because we're not only looking after the group and the job, but then it's our personal lives. And honestly, it's that full circle which we continue to talk about of where it is. But that side quest, I truly love that. I think that's one of the key takeaways, and I've never heard that with any coach I spoke about before. So you've definitely brought us something new there, Frank.
I think that's just our mentality. It's funny. It's my assistant Courtney and I. It's we have this short attention span, but we have this passion for coaching and soccer, and I think that's what happens when you start to break away from the soccer player is not always the ultimate goal. It's I want people with good character to bring into the program. Like, yes, it helps that you can run and kick the ball in the right direction, but I want good people surrounding our staff, our school, our team. So I think that's the biggest thing is if we can find good people that are just after it for the right reasons. They want to get better. They want to build something memorable. They want to have those side quests because I think the important part is that's how college is. You have your side quest you have your academic classes. You have maybe new groups you want to join, new friends, a new team. All of a sudden, say you become a captain. Now there's a side quest for you. Now, how do I organize and manage myself, let alone manage everybody else? It's an interesting time. So yeah, you have to wear a lot of different hats. That's what I love about college is it's not just the X's and O's. It's are you helping them as people? Are you helping them as academic students getting prepared to get their job? When boyfriend or girlfriend break up with them, are you there to listen and help guide them, being like, there's gonna be another. Don't worry, learn from this one. It's a fun job. I really enjoy it.
100%, and I completely agree with you there because I've actually got my sister watching a podcast downstairs of an episode, and the interviewee was saying about if you want to get better at public speaking, go to say like a debate club, for example. So for in that sense, that would be a side quest for the players because. You want to get their confidence coming out. You want them to become a leader. You want them to talk in front of their, peers. You want them to lead from the front. So how would they look on that side quest? So would they go and join a debating club? Would they go and join, a leadership club? Would they go and join a club which looks into, say, the history of sports? So then they're looking at, how they appraise information, how they critically analyze it, how they, prepare themselves. And it's all these other things. So it's not just a set journey, right? I'm going to join a school, then I'm going to go through the program, I'll get my qualifications, and then boom, I'm a player, or this is what happens. It's like, right, actually, you've got this one route, but you have to do this stem, this stem, this stem, and essentially it's those side quests which creates them, and essentially it's those side quests which might bring a lot more than, say, that direct journey right through, and that's what helps them grow as characters and as people to get to where maybe their end goal or objective is.
For sure. I mean, and that's where we grow the most, I think. Like, I love just interactions like this, just being able to meet somebody new and have this conversation. Like, there's always a takeaway from it. I love having a conversation with other coaches where we get into the whole coaching education debate. And I know everybody has their own opinion. They're like, oh, well, I've never needed coaching education, or I never took something away from all these courses. And I'm like, to me, I kind of look at it as maybe your lens is just a little bit too blindfolded, where I was like, I've never not been to a course where I haven't taken something away from it. Even the youth courses, like if I'm going to say a course that's more on the 7th side, but I deal with college players, there's always something I've been able to find and steal and adapt and really enjoy. I just think that's kind of what everybody's after, is if you're not after that growth mindset where in college, this is more of your lifestyle. Like to me, in youth and in high school, this is a hobby. This is something you enjoy doing with some of your spare time. But once you hit that college level, it starts turning into a lifestyle. So now are you eating the right way? Are you hanging out with the right people? Are you getting a chance to go to do the things that you want to do on the side? Get the right sleep? I mean, it's a different management style, but I think it comes with maturity. We all make our pitfalls and downfalls and mistakes, but I think that's the biggest thing is, are you going to quit or are you going to just bounce back up, say, yep, screwed up, own up to it, move on? That's the difference. So, yeah, I think that's what everybody's after is if you have that growth mindset, good things are going to happen. If you kind of get locked in where I know it all, I'm okay, I'm winning tournaments and trophies, like, well, good luck to you in the long term. I'll see you in the final, hopefully.
I think that's a great point because as I was on that coaching course myself, and I was working with, there was one coach on there that I was working with, great coach, and very much had a lot more coaching experience than me at that point. But he was like, "Oh, I don't care what the content says here. This is how I'm going to do it." I was like, "Okay, right. Is he not adaptable and have that growth mindset? And are they negatives, A, or is he B, a stickler to what his methodology is, his delivery, how that looks, and he knows where he's at?" But I was like, "Do you know what? There's actually so much that he's probably never done in his coaching style that he could actually take away and improve, and he will actually apply it without him noticing it." But it was just the way that I come across during a learning process. I was like, you've already put a barrier up whilst you're learning, and therefore you're going to say, essentially shoot yourself in the foot because of it. And it's always stuck with me, and it's just that, little 30-second comment, and, years on, it still sits in the back of my mind somewhere.
I think we always fight the what's right and wrong. Like, I think when we go to a course or a convention or when we learn a new method, like, the thing that we get caught up in is I think when you're there taking it, you have to put the focus and time and attention into what you're doing because that's the new methodology and that's the way they would like it presented. And you have to go outside of your comfort zone and learn it and try to present. Doesn't mean you have to stick with it and stay that way. And I think that's kind of the internal battle that everybody has is they think there's a right and wrong, or right now, say positional play. Everybody wants to play like Liverpool, Man City, everybody. Yeah, it's a beautiful and attractive way. I personally enjoy that. I want to replicate it, but at the same point, I know I don't have Man City players. I don't have Barcelona players, but I enjoy that way of playing. So we actively chase that. Where everybody else, I think, sometimes you look at it as, okay, well, next year the Germans won, so now we're going to do everything the way that Germany has set up their youth curriculum. The next couple of years, Argentina wins the World Cup. Now we're going to do everything the way they do it. I think you have to decide: do you want to chase trends, or do you want to observe and witness trends, but still kind of learn how to adapt it to what you do and work off, and how do you blend it? I don't think there's one way of doing it. I think there's so many ways you can get to the result. It's just a matter of, hey, can you do it where your kids or your team understand what you want from them? Like, we get too tacky and too terminology stuff as coaches, I think. Like, we go to these courses, we love everything we hear, we bring it back, and we just confuse the heck out of our players. I think it's stick to what you feel is going to hit with your audience. Stick with your gut, go with it, but you can't be blind to stuff that's out there. I think we get caught up with that sometimes.
Absolutely, and once again, another great point made, and you said a great question then, how can we get our players to understand it, or how do we make sure the players understand it in terms of what we want? Because suddenly, we got our own direction, our own framework, our own style of delivery, and then we got an assistant coach who might bring something, and then we got a coaching curriculum, then we say we got the organisation's expectations and objectives, then the season plays out, then we're reflecting, then we're watching film, and then we might bring in something new from, say, a coaching course. But for them and for us, there is so much again happening in terms of how that goes across a season. By the end of it, if we were to write down every coaching point made, every objective, every session, everything we've done, you would have like a massive book, but it would just be like, right, how much of that have they actually retained and taken away? How much has actually been overloaded? And that's the importance of how we deliver it and take sessions away in terms of that. And when you do, and you keep saying about terminology, which is great, and the keywords. So when you're planning your sessions, it obviously sounds like you've got a methodology in terms of how you do things. So when you're planning those sessions, in your head, are you going, right, I need to use these words and I'm going to cut out these? Do you get down to that nitty-gritty detail? Or is that just something you naturally bring yourself and plan your sessions?
Actually, this question is perfect because it was actually going into something I was thinking of as you were going with it. That's exactly what my issue was the last couple of years. Is you would go to these courses and conventions. Us as coaches would eat up the content, love it, love the ideas behind it. But then when we went back to our audience, we're using the terminology. They're looking at you like, Coach, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I think the last 2 years, I've really put in the investment of how can we reach the audience better? Because I felt like I was starting to get all over the place. I was taking Dutch terms, Spanish terms, US terms, English terms. We were all over the place. So I think what I did this past year, and I really wanted to make a point, was of, say, for instance, we're just talking about simple passing lanes, whether it's open or it's closed. We stole from Todd Bean over at Tovo is the green highway analogy, and it makes sense. Young kids and adults understand it. Pretend you're driving a car. If there's an accident in front of you, that's a red highway. You're not passing that ball or your car through the accident out the other side. It's just not going to happen. So that was just something as we kind of talked, and we're, say day one, you're doing your rondos and you're talking about just looking for players sitting in between other players to receive, and then just being able to play that through ball. Nothing further than that. We just constantly harped on creating green highways, positioned so that you're not staring at the accident. Like, you're not going to be able to drive through the accident. Can you make a way so that there's a green highway? Green means go. That's the way we want the ball to go. And it's green, go ahead. So when we started kind of almost looking at it like just using a ton of analogies, to me, analogies were the way to go. Everybody has a different way of learning, but I think if you can throw in a past experience, a picture, and something maybe a little bit humorous in there, I feel like right away you're grabbing that attention. You're going to retain and learn a little bit quicker, a little bit more. And I just know from my own sense, that's how I learn. It's whether that's right or wrong, I like bright colors, lots of pictures, entertain me. I need to see it. That's going to help me learn it. That's what we focused on this past year, and it made such a world of a difference. So instead of checking those boxes in the methodology, it was, hey, do we just understand where there's an open passing lane versus a closed passing lane? And for us, it was, hey, is there a green highway or a red highway? In a game, probably people thought I was nuts. I'm yelling out, Alyssa, create a green highway. You got to position better. And people are like, what is he talking about, a highway? I didn't care what they thought. My team understood. I understood. We were able to identify it and do it. I looked at it as it was a win. So that's how we've been doing a lot lately.
And that's incredible to hear because, essentially you've become a transformational coach because you're transforming that terminology into something more positive rather than going, right, can we hit the channel or can we, just get the ball down there? Can we get it to player A or player B? And there's a lot which we still see in the UK where it's like, right, just get rid or kick it out your hands or kick it long. But that's such a great, little thing to take away in terms of, right, is that a green highway, a red highway? And just automatically then they're thinking, right, oh, can I do this? And, oh, I can't do that. So they're thinking on the pitch for themselves and their problem solving, as well as giving good terminology and understanding that awareness, and then they're analysing and critically aware of what they can and cannot do. Well, I think that's absolutely perfect the way that you do it, and sometimes we're overcomplicating things. So again, if you're in the change rooms, you give all those objectives and then you give individual objectives, and then you're shouting things from the side as the game goes on. Automatically then a player's trying to think for themselves and work out what they're trying to do, and then they're going to go into like sort of a red zone and go, oh, I'm overcomplicating it. And I can think of a player in my mind, and he was so bad for it last year because he's overthinking it and he wants to try and do his best, and it's literally right. Less is more. And he was like, what does that mean? I was like, right, I don't want you running left, I don't want you running right, I just want you to hold this position, get the ball, pass and go, and just make it simple and slow the game down a little bit. And when you're on a ball, maybe take an extra touch and just calm yourself down. And then he started to think about it in terms of that method and how it works. But what you said there, I think if we can just give something which gets them thinking and going, right, ooh, and it literally pings that green light of themselves, it's even better for us in terms of how then we deliver and how that works as a framework then essentially.
Yeah, I think the one thing I've noticed, or I've started to, preach to my friends, is I feel like a lot of the issues, if not the majority of issues, just come from either poor or misunderstood communication. Like, I don't necessarily think I'm reinventing the wheel or teaching something the last coach didn't try to teach. I just think maybe the approach or how we were trying to be able to identify or understand what we both wanted or expected. I think that was the biggest thing. So I think that's you're exactly right. I think just for me, I understood that the analogies or putting a picture with the situation was just helping us understand it so much more than, like you said, when we go to these courses, we get all this content, I get all excited, and you come back and we're talking about make the third man run and we're doing this. And I'm like, Coach, what do you mean third man? Like, it's stuff that's just over their head. And I'm like, I got it. Like, dumb it down. And I shouldn't even say dumb it down because that's a poor reference, but make it so people understand. Like, if you weren't a coach, could you still understand this stuff? So I've been appreciating that a lot more because I think it's also helped me in my personal life, in my interactions with my wife, my parents that are getting older, my team, your friends. I think that was just the biggest thing is if we can communicate a little bit clearer, a little bit calmer, use a pause every now and then, make the impact. I think that, like you said, less is more. That's been the biggest impact for us this past year. Yeah.
100%. And, even so, just slowing it down or that terminology, because sometimes I've gone into an older group, 14s, 15s, at an academy level, and the expectation is there for them to understand that terminology and what the expectations are. But we might have had a player who's only just come in on a 6-month trial and then he's been signed. And then suddenly he's going, what does that mean? And you can see him looking around and his head's picking up like, what's that? And automatically the other coach is like, he should know that. I was like, yeah, but he's only just come in from, say, grassroots for 6 months. So he's literally, if you've got one player who's been in 4 or 5 years and has been part of that cycle and process, he's essentially 4 or 5 years behind in terms of that terminology, that consistent process which he's been in, because he's been at grassroots for longer. So it's just sometimes going back and even just giving to your players, because, going back and undoing things, or maybe going, right, do you really understand that and stripping it back, or putting in the foundations? They're not always going to have these foundations which we're going to expect them to have, especially, say at high school, college and so on, because we're picking players up and yourselves from so many different areas, and they're coming in and they're forming teams, and we got players, and they've all got different journeys. It's not like we've been with them for 10 years and we've hit all those boxes and they're all at the same point. We've got players who might have so many boxes missing but so many ticked in one place. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, that's the human side. I think sometimes we also have to reel ourselves back in for, like, with us in coaching, we all get in our coaching bubbles and we all, we live our soccer or football lifestyle. It's tough to remember sometimes, like, we're human. Like, the people I work with are 18 to, say, 21, 22-year-old females. Like, they're going through a lot of other things. Soccer's not their full-time job. Sometimes we reel ourselves back with that because you get so caught up, and everybody has their own level of interest or passion that they have in what they do. And I think that, like you said, that's the hard thing, is in the end of the day, remembering they're human. They still want to like this when you're done with them. You just try to give them the best experience you possibly can. But at the same time, I think there is something to be said. It's, you hold them accountable. You do have to push them. You do have to have those uncomfortable moments. But at the end of the day, they're still human. I think that's the part we have to remember.
And on the back of that, so say you've got 4 sessions ahead of you, and you say you've planned out all 4 sessions, but say session 1 hasn't hit, say, all the objectives or the outcomes you wanted, and maybe some of the players are lacking maybe that understanding. So you're going to need a bit more repetition, and maybe just repeating it again for, say, sessions 2 and 3 is needed, just to make sure that everything's been captured and so on. Would you be willing then to sacrifice or give up session 2 and 3, or is it right, we have to move on, but I might hit these points across your sessions?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's gone both ways. When I first started out and I was understanding coaching, it was okay. We had to, like you said, we did earlier, we had to check the box and we had to go in order. But you run into that issue, and I think that's one of the things that when you're coaching, you start to learn as you're growing and having those growing pains is, okay, well, if I have this group of 5 or 6 that really get it and they're pinging the ball around, and I have a group of 5 or 6 that are still struggling, how do we adapt or do that? I've gone to sessions where in the first, like in our activation, after about 5-10 minutes, I've basically taken the paper and either thrown it out or just put it back in my pocket and be like, this isn't going to work today. We've adapted a lot of exercises on the fly, and I think you have to. I think sometimes what you want or what your goal is not necessarily what's going on at the time. Like maybe some players had a bad day academically. Some are having a bad personal day. Maybe some just flat out aren't understanding it because they haven't been taught some of these things from a different level. There's just so many factors that go into it that we overlook that, sometimes, yes, you can adapt and make different groups where I'm pushing this group where what they need, and this group can maybe be more of a facilitated taught group. But then there's other times where you're like, you know what, scrap the coaching plan. Today might just be we go out, we play 11 aside on the field, and the coach shuts their mouth. You go eat candy and sit in the sideline and shut up, and you let them play. Sometimes you have to do that. I think we get caught up in the methodology and the check boxes. Days like that, you still have to be an observable person. If I'm looking at coach and coach looks like he had a rough day today, maybe I don't pick out those coaching points on coach that day as many times because, they've had a rough day. I just give them a little bit of time to breathe. So I think, yeah, there's days where you just throw the practice plan right in the bin and you're just like, okay, we're going with it today.
I love that because it's so true. Because if we deliver a session at 6 o'clock in the evening, that's a long period of time. If they've woken up, say 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, how much they've gone through, how many different conversations they had, how much information has been relayed, what the day before has looked like. So there's so many external factors, and I love that you hit upon groups as well because we have different groups, we have different understandings in terms of those groups. So if we've planned out a session and say we've done a warm up, then we might do a technical, then we might go into a small sided game. For some coaches, and I know I'm a stickler for it at times, but if I've planned in, say, a 20-minute game and only a 20-minute technical, and I'm like, right, they haven't hit the components of the technical, or they're not understanding it, right, I might shorten the small-sided game at the end because I'm like, they need this extra time just to get that repetition and understanding in. And then next week, instead of going, right, I'm going to move on to this session or I'm going to plan a different session, I might just repeat the exact same one for that repetition for them to understand. Then I'm seeing that learning outcome. And I know when I first started, I was like, right, I've got 10 sessions, so every 10 sessions is going to look different in terms of what I want for a theme. But I'm like, right, I might spend 3-4 sessions doing the same session, or I might spend 4 sessions doing a theme, but 2 look the same, and then 2 look the same as another, but they're different in 2 blocks of 2. And I think those groups are really important. And facilitation, because we're quite coach led, and we want to be hands on, and we want to be delivering, but sometimes just facilitating the learning and those building blocks and that repetition and how they recap things and do things is really important, because sometimes we do a session and we might not see them for a few days, and then we're doing it again, and it's like, right, what can you recall from last time? And some players are going because it's not that they've purposely forgot. They've lived their life. And I know the other night I read a book. The next day I'm trying to recall it on the car on the way to work. And I'm like, I can't just recall those points. So it's like, when I get home tonight, I'm just going to recap them. So I think that learning, that facilitation, those groups and those external factors are all such key points in themselves.
Yeah, I think if you could find a variety of ways to be able to incorporate fun and entertainment, but still keep your focus, I think that's really the key to it. So, kind of going off the example you were bringing up, where if you say you had a bad week, and we've all had those weeks where, say, for instance, one of your players, they just broke up with their boyfriend, they just failed their math exam, they're not getting a ton of sleep, maybe their family's having some issues at home. Kid comes to practice, and you're like, okay, this is what we're working on today. All of a sudden, that kid's head is just all over the place. That sometimes they just need the break. And then there's other ways you can so-called observe or test or poke to see if they've understood things. Like this past year, we took an idea from Todd Bean and Tova, and we started to implement journaling. And all the journal simply was, from my side of things, was to see if it could help the retainment of the information from the sessions. So it kind of put me in a checks and balances where my session had to be simple, it had to be clearly facilitated, I had to have a little bit of enjoyment going in there, but I had to be on point in order to make sure that when they're doing their journal, they could say, okay, like the prompts were, can you detail what we did in practice? Just give me a small little diagram, show me where the people were, what were we trying to hit? Second one was, where did you feel like you felt you were brilliant today? Where did you feel like you struggled today? And then any type of personal comments at the bottom. That stuff to me gave such an eye-opening experience, because it showed me what days I needed to maybe go lighter with some people. What's going on in people's personal life that maybe they wouldn't share with you outwardly, but they're comfortable putting it written down, knowing that coach is going to read this. He's not going to share it with anybody else, but I'm okay writing it, but I might struggle presenting it to you in person. It's just such an eye-opening experience. I mean, I get to see how they learn, what they retain, where they struggle, what other factors are coming into their life right now that they want to focus on or are concerned about. That was such a big impactful thing that we did this year, but it was strictly from the standpoint of exactly what you said. It was, can we see what they're learning? Can we give them some ownership of the process? But also, can I kind of test, poke, but make it light and fun at the same point? So it's not always easy, but that was a huge impactful moment for us this past year, and it helped that process a lot.
And it's so true as well, because in terms of that session delivering that style, I remember doing my coursework for my B, and I remember doing some sessions and there's like so much detail in there. It spanned across like 6 pages. I was like, well, this is insane for an hour session. I was like, it's great because there's so much detail, but I was like, as you said there, right, are they having fun? Do we hit the objectives? What can we do? And maybe what's the transition with a game at the end? And sometimes you're just planning a little session like that and then giving some out information across it. And then at the end, right, have you enjoyed it? Yes. Have you retained this information? What can we recap? And have we seen you technically develop? that's as good as a session for me as that 6-page detailed one as well. And I got to a point where I was academy coaching, I was working with such good groups, and the intensity was so high and it was great. But it just got to a point where I was like, do you know what? This has actually taken me away from who I was then. And I'm like, right, I'm enjoying coaching less. It's so intense. I'm not really at a point where I want to continue to do this and see this out. I remember having a period of time out because I spoke to my head of phase, and I was like, I'm not enjoying it no more. And I said, the last 4 years I went through and it flew by. I said, I've never once been in this position. And I said, even though now I've stepped up, say, to the next level, I'm not enjoying it as much as I was at this level. So I remember taking some time out, and at the end of the season he said, do you want to come back? And I went, no. And not unless I'm working with these groups. And by the time that happened, the club I was at decided to cut all those groups off and just drop them all off the system. And I was like, I don't want to come back and be in this position because I've actually lost sense of who I am as well. So as much as it's working with players and that's a sense of themselves, for us as coaches as well, we don't want to lose sense of who we are and what we're doing. And just because we do a course or got content doesn't mean we have to put it into our framework or delivery.
Such a reflective moment, I think, from both ends. Like you said, is for us, it's do we enjoy what we're doing, and do you believe in what you're doing? Because you might get stuff forced upon you that you have to do, but maybe it's not your passion. And then the same thing, I think, is perfect for the kids. If they're not enjoying it, no matter how intense and how good and the quality of play they're putting out there, the kid's not coming back. Like, I can teach them third man runs until they can do it in their sleep, but at the same point, if they're like, I'm just not having fun playing and training anymore, like, no matter if they can do that third man run or not, doesn't matter. They're not going to want to be out there doing it. So I think that's tough. It's reflective. Exactly like you said, you have to make it enjoyable still. Otherwise, we lose our identity. They lose their love and their identity. It's a balance game. It is.
And I've been in that position as well, where I've seen other coaches deliver or take lead, and I'm a teacher myself full time in a day, and sometimes I observe lessons and I see great teachers hitting great outcomes and whatnot, but sometimes I'm just looking around the classroom like not enjoying it, and I'm like, right, you've lost their attention, you've lost their focus, therefore then in their mind, if they're not enjoying 4 out of 5 lessons overall in a day, that's 90% of things that they haven't enjoyed. Cross that over a week, by a month, over a year, they're starting to hate education and learning. And I was speaking to a young pupil yesterday who's only 12, and they were saying to me, I hate learning, sir, I really hate learning. And I was like, whoa, you're 12 years old. To say you don't enjoy school, I might understand. But to say you hate learning, I was like, right, we got to do something drastic here to try and turn things around. And I was like, right, what experiences have led you to not enjoy learning, to hate it, to not want to engage, not to say have aspirations, not to even be, curious about how things work? And I've said, I'm seeing a lull in kids in terms of where I work right now, in terms of that attainment and outcome. So, but you said it on the point there, as much as we got coaching outcomes and things going on, making sure they enjoy it is the absolute key pinnacle of what football is, because kids run on the street with a ball at the age of 4, 5, 6, whatever. They're doing it because they want to have fun. There's no coach there and there's no coaching points, and then we put them into a refined practice or dedicated session and we're giving them coaching and so on. But at the end of the day, the core outcome is they want to enjoy it, and that's just for me, that's the key of all coaching.
It's a tough job that we get thrown at us. I mean, you're basically saying let's take the game of chess and go make it fun for a 6-year-old. It's easier said than done. But I think at the end of the day, if we keep revisiting, like, why did we play the game before we even got into coaching? We did it because our friends were doing it. We had fun, and because we enjoyed learning a new skill. Like, those are typically some of the factors that come out that are when you talk about burnout and dropout of sport. And our sport, unfortunately, is one of the largest dropout rates of any other sport is youth soccer, and specifically in the U.S. So I think that's one of the things we can't forget is we do it because we have fun. We do it because friends are with us, and we do it because we want to learn and get better. But not everybody checks all 3 of those criteria. Like, you might be there because you enjoy being with your friends. Well, your soccer competitive journey might end in the grassroots level. It doesn't mean you can't stop playing the game, but you might be at the grassroots level because you just enjoy the companionship. I think everybody has to find their level, but I agree so much with you in terms of just got to reflect back on, try to keep it fun. That's the whole point of why we coach. I mean, we loved it as a player, and we still want to be in the game. We just got a little bit older, a little more seasoned, and we can't keep up anymore. So if we want to stay in the game, remember how it was when we were in the game. It's, again, easier said than done, but that's it, man. We want to keep it fun, keep them coming back.
Absolutely, and again, when they're in their 20s, their 30s, we can't recreate when they, young players with ourselves, and they cannot go back unless a time machine is created in the future by Elon Musk or someone. But that we cannot recreate these moments. So making sure that they enjoy it and they can look back, and even if they don't make it as a pro or they don't have further scholarships or anything like that, they can look back with fondness and go, you know what, I enjoyed being with Coach Frank, or I learned this off Coach Frank, or I learned this off Coach Courtney, or I had a good time while I was here. And that's what it's all about, because we can't recreate those moments. Life still goes on. Sport can stop at any point, and you never know what's around the corner. Touch wood, they might have, an accident which prevents them from playing, but at least the memory and those moments and the emotion can still live on with them. And for me, that's a big part of my philosophy.
It's started to become to measure success. Like I talked to my assistant about all the time. I said, to me, it's gotten to the point where I'd rather view it as in 20 to 30 years, if you're getting invites to come see your former players and go see their weddings and go be a part of their lives still, I feel like we did it the right way. If they're not calling, if they don't want to keep in touch with you, if they want no parts of the program anymore, maybe our focus and emphasis was just way too much sport and not enough on people, the relationship side of it. My college coach had a saying where he's talking about, it's not the X's and the O's, it's about the Johnnies and the Joes. I get it. Like, and you don't get it first starting out. It's build the relationship. They'll run through walls for you. If you just try to teach them the skill set, they don't really care why they're doing it or where and when they're going to try to do it. It's on their terms. But if you make that connection with them, they'll get it. They'll understand the why. They'll want to go do it versus being forced upon it. So relationships is huge.
And, part of that journey is reflection. And you've brought it up twice in the last, 10 minutes or so. So what does reflection look like for you?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's such a tough one. It's changed a lot, I guess, as it should. In the beginning, when you're starting out, it was, and I can tell you my own personal story, it was all about how do I get good players? How do I win games? I went to a rough school where there wasn't much of a tradition. How do we just win? And when you put the focus on just that, it turns into now you don't have good team chemistry. Now you don't have an administration that's on the same page as you. So it's just, there's so much stuff going on. So I think if you can't reflect back on it, say, okay, yes, we made soccer strides, but say my team doesn't even want to come into my office and talk to me, there's a problem there. Or say they always want to come in and hang out, but yet we can't make a pass for our life anywhere across the field. Okay, maybe now it's too much on the interaction side of the relationship. Now maybe we have to push a little more soccer. It's just a constant checks and balances, but I think after falling on your face enough, and move into other teams being like, why did I do that? That was dumb. You're forcing people to do things they don't want to do. I think you start to realize your approach has to change. It's a willingness. You find the people that want to do it. You have to find a good method or way to communicate with them. And then at the end of the day, it's, did you hit the objectives that both you had in mind and you had for the team? It's tough because you can't blind your team path with your own personal path. And it's just that constant challenge in life of which road do I go? Is it myself? Is it with a group? It's interesting. It's a lot of fun, but I think if you can't look back and learn from failing or take something away from a bad time, you're caught up in you think you're doing everything the right way. And I think when we start to think that way, you should stop coaching. If you think you know it all or you think you don't do any harm, you got to really take a step back. And I think that's one of the most important things for me. Is in the beginning, it was everything's result driven. Let's get wins. Let's get wins. Well, if nobody likes you, no one's going to play for you to get the wins. And I think that's something that really starts to come clear the older you get is, yes, it gets more intense, but the relationships have to get more intense too. And so you have to want to make that bond.
I agree, and I think I retweeted something very similar earlier. And if you're not enjoying it, stop doing it. And it's a very simple thing because and that's where I got to the point in my coaching. That's why I stopped. So I'm not enjoying it. So I'm not giving the greatest experience, not giving the greatest vision of myself. So for the benefit of the group, I need to take a step back here and just let them carry on and take some time to myself. And it comes down to good players and good people as well. And being a good person sometimes can mean taking a step back and going, right, I don't have to be at the forefront. I don't have to be leading it. And you're very lucky in terms of having an assistant coach because you might take a step back for a week or 2 weeks and do the operational things and so on. And your assistant might lead on things and lead the sessions. And that's great development for them and everything works hand in hand and it's a good picture. But when it comes down to good people then, how do you identify good people?
It's a great question because everybody has a different thing that's important to them. I think you have to be okay with the quality of the results of the work are going to vary, knowing that, most assistants are going to be younger and still learning and coming up. So I think in the beginning, if you get mad about that stuff, that is going to change if you put more of the focus on teaching your assistant how to be a coach. The other part is, I think, them wanting to do it is, okay, we're recruiting. This is what I look for in a player. We're focused on decision making, not necessarily the tallest, fastest, strongest kid. I want to see if the person off the ball moves into the right place at the right time. That, to me, they're making great decisions. We can work with that player. So explaining kind of what your expectations are, and it's funny because I wrote an article about this a while back in a magazine, is training your assistant. I almost feel like you have to break it into pieces. You have to train them to help you and your team and your mission and goal. But then I feel like you also have a responsibility as a head coach is I also have to help them develop because they have goals for themselves too. So it's tough because you got to break it up. And I can say the other piece is this is how you recruit, say for the college setting. This is for the piece for us is this is what specifically we're recruiting for this team. And to be able to kind of have that divide is not easy to create, but it's putting time and investment into Courtney as a person, as a coach and where she wants to get to, not just putting the investment into her as how she can help me. And I think that's what we get caught up in, especially in the college world, is we got to get good players. We got to train this. We got to have this recovery program. We got to go here. I also got to focus on where does she want to get to. So for me, that's kind of how I do it is a lot of when we do the recruiting part now and we talk to players is where do you want to get to? What's your ultimate goal? What's important to you? Because I can't make you want to play this game anymore. That has to come from you. I feel confident enough to understand we can make you better, but I can't make you want to do it. Like that has to be an internal motivation, internal factor. So that's really what we've been doing is deep diving on the questions, get to know them in the recruiting process. Then I'll know if they're good people. The kicking it in the right direction. Yes, that helps. But at the same point, I want to surround my team, my staff, my people with good people that have good character, people that are responsible, resilient. Those are the things that will transpire into other areas in life. Not just appease me because you're on the soccer field. There's other things that we want to get out of you later on down the road. But I guess that's kind of how I go at it. Make a long story short.
No, so that's such a great answer. So many thoughts coming off as you're saying that, and I think it's as you said. We've all got different variations of what good people are or what's a good session and so on. And we got different expectations of things. So it's good to hear what the other perspective is because sometimes we can be so honed in on what our expectations are. As we said, unless we got that learning journey, and we think we know it all. Do you know what? I could take away this from Frank, and I might go, do you know what? I might push that out and bring this in. So if when you're doing a recruitment event and you see all these players which you have a disposal, say, to pick from, say you've got the most technical player but you've seen him become very angry, you've seen him kick off, maybe not be a leader but could be chipped away into one, he may not have the greatest relationship with his parents, he gets frustrated if his team is losing, but you see that he's a very good technical player, but he maybe could be formed into a good player. Is he someone that you would go and give that opportunity to, or do you think, right, I'm going to leave him even though he's technically good and maybe he might fit another organisation elsewhere? Because sometimes bringing a player in could be detrimental to the group, and sometimes trying to put that work into them can take up a lot of time away from the group and it can be difficult.
Yeah, that's not an easy situation. I think young Frank 10 years ago with a lot more hair would have said we're taking that technical player. Frank nowadays, I think, realizes that I don't care how good they are as a soccer player if they're not going to want to be willing to be part of something bigger than themselves. It's probably the easiest and most general way I could put it is the game and the team are so much bigger than you. Yes, I want to help you make a name for yourself. I want to make you get better individually. I want to get accolades and get your name in the press. But at the same point, it's not all about you. And I think that is the hardest part is getting them to understand, I get you have downfalls and pitfalls everywhere. But do you have the fortitude or that growth mindset where you're I'm willing to ask for help because I'm not willing to roll over. I'm willing to take that player, no matter how good or how weak they are technically. If they have that mindset of, Coach, I get it. It's bigger than me. Yes, I have goals for myself, but I want to make a name for this program, and I want to leave this in a better spot when I leave here. That's the kid I'm after now. I'd rather that kid than the kid that's going to win me the extra game. I get it, and it might sound absolutely crazy and nuts, but I want good people. I think good people long-term are going to produce more of the results you want than the instant gratification of we're going to win that one game and go to that final this year, but yet my whole team hates each other. That's not a fun experience. So it's hard, but like I want good humans. That's what I want. I just want good people being around us. So, when I'm not there, your mom and dad aren't there. Are you just going to help each other out in time of need? That's what's important nowadays. I feel like with everything going on.
No, and it's true, because we live in such a difficult world. There's so many factors going on, and relationships can be up and down. And creating a good environment is key. Those values, those non-negotiables. Our expectations, what we want to instill, how we help those people. And again, if you bring in the wrong people, then it's going to be detrimental to that, and then the environment can become difficult. And then you've got to manage it, and it takes away from the actual importance of what coaching is and how it looks. And it's the same in a classroom. If two learners are disrupting the learning of the other 28, then that experience for the 28 can be horrific, and they're not really learning much. And it's the same in this group. And I had a group a couple of years ago, and we had a very good technical young player, but he caused us so many issues in terms of behaviour and those expectations. He took up so much time, and sometimes he made the sessions detrimental. Then you could see the parents on the side getting frustrated, then the players getting frustrated, then you're sort of in the middle seeing everything start to surround you. And I've moved on now, but the assistant coach I had at the time is now the head coach. And this player left, and he wanted to come back, and the head coach actually had to stop and go, I can't take you this time. We've been through it, and we just have to look at the group that I got now. And sometimes it's difficult, because some people go, oh, you're turning away a young player or a young person. But sometimes, for the absolute best of the other 28 or so on, or however you've got, you need to sometimes make that harsh decision. And it's not like you're giving up because you've got other opportunities, and another coach might go, do you know what, I'm going to take you on and do it. It just means that you have to sometimes put the others first before someone else.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. To me, I think it's a matter of, is the person willing to meet me halfway? I don't think you're giving up on anybody by just flat out walking away from them if they're not willing to walk halfway to you. And I think that's the biggest thing, is you can want to help them all they want, but if they're not willing to recognize that there's other things bigger than them, you're fighting an uphill battle. Like, perfect example for you in the same story. A couple of years ago, I had a very, very good player that probably could have been the first All-American in the program I was in at the time. Two-time first team all-conference player. Kid loved the party. Kid was an absolute team chemistry nightmare, right? Was into drugs, into drinking, would just come to practice and cause issues. I made phone calls to a bunch of coaching friends, and I was just like, listen, this is the situation. Like, my gut feeling is get rid of this player. I don't care if she helps me, because she would have helped us get to finals and maybe win a championship, but you can't get blinded by it. And I was like, is 1 year of that worth, and at the time I think I had like 30 players, is it worth the 29 other players just being miserable and hating everything? And it wasn't. I ended up throwing that player off the team and getting rid of her. And people thought I was nuts, but at the same point, I was like, it's not worth it. The 1 year of the so-called conference championship, and say you get your notoriety for everything, it's not worth having 3 months of a constant headache or people just not enjoying the experience. Like, we didn't sign up as coaches to come in and have to deal with constant negativity, and they didn't sign up as players to come into a program that's going to be filled with negativity. So I think that's the thing, is it's not about the individual. I don't care how good you are. Like, just be a good person and want to help others and want to get better. And I think that's, are you willing to make that tough decision? I personally, got to the point, I was like, I don't care. I'm willing to do it. If I get fired over not winning, so be it. Inside, I felt like I made the right decision. But I think that's it, is you got to meet them halfway. If they're not willing to meet you halfway, there's only so much you can do.
Absolutely, I agree. And when it comes down to it then, and obviously building a good team, good people, good environment, what are the values that are important to you, and how do you instill them?
Yeah, I think the ownership of your own, say you break it into pieces, if you do the soccer side of things, is the ownership over your own preparation. Like, the one that gets to me and makes me laugh now are the people that show up to your preseason and say you have your fitness test and people don't do it. Coach, I worked out hard this season. Well, okay, you might have worked out, but maybe you didn't work out to the extent you needed to work out to. Like, show me the ownership. Like, this is now not your job, but this is your lifestyle. Like, are you eating the right way, sleeping the right way? Like, say you and I are after the same position. You're like, Coach, I work hard every single day. You only work 50%. It might only take me 50% to produce the same results that you're working at for 100. But it's a matter of, are you willing to do the extras and put in the time and investment, because this is important to more than just yourself. Those people, soccer-wise, love them. Then you go to the personal side of things is the way I was raised was you were a grinder. I mean, it was grit. It was if you failed, you get up, you do it again. It wasn't you can cry about it, but no one was going to listen to you. It was get up, go do it again. So I kind of adopted that mentality. And at the same point, when we talked about change earlier, that was part of the change that I had to make with myself is, yes, that's how I grew up and how I did things, but that's not how everybody else does stuff. So I had to take that mentality of, I guess, so-called stubbornness and actually had to dumb it down a little bit and tone it down and be like, okay, these aren't me. These are 30 other people. These are not 30 clones of Frank. Like they all do things differently. It's you have to be willing to want to do it, want to persevere, have the resilience, and go ask for help. Those are now the people I'm after. I don't care if you fall on your face. Like we've all done it. We're all human. It's going to happen again. But are you willing to screw up, own up, and then how can we move past it together? Those are the people I'm after, not the I screwed up, but it was your fault. I don't have time for those people.
And I think that's great because, again, it's around the people who people are and they're the focus of what we're doing. And, it's their journey and where we're going and we have to have that impact. And, again, as coaches and teachers and facilitators and so on, we don't sign up to deal with all the negatives that surround it. Yes, they will come up. Yes, we can have different personalities, but do we want it 90% of the time? No. So we have to have that. And I think those values are really important. And especially for, say, coaches listening and starting out on their own coaching journey, they may start thinking about tactics and philosophy and their playing principles and framework, but sometimes they forget, right, well, we need the values of the X, Y, and Z, and these need to be people values, and we need to put that first, and that relates to what success looks like. And again, success for you is where you're at in, say, 10 years, and these players are contacting you and getting in touch, and that's what you want, essentially, and that's part of what I think as well. And hopefully, the players that I've moved on from now with the other assistant coach, they still hold me in high regard, and I still have those relationships and so on, and that's what the coaching is for me and where we're at. So when it comes down to, say, being on the pitch then, what are your, say, playing principles and values in terms of what you expect to see from your team?
It's definitely changed a lot over the last couple of years, but with the methodology we implement and we push the TOVO methodology, a lot of it is based off of decision making. And I think the biggest push for us is whether you're on the ball or off the ball, no matter which transitional piece, whether it's the attacking side or defending side, is do we understand off the ball where we need to be to help either collectively support play or collectively join play and build off of. It's tough because what we're noticing a lot when we go recruiting are that collective style of play has been tougher to implement at a lot of other places, but you can find the players that understand the small little principles of it. Like so for instance, the opposite movement. When I make a pass, I'm not passing and following straight to the ball because that's where every defender is going because they're defending the ball. I'm passing and telling my kid, pass and stay. Sounds absolutely ludicrous and crazy, but I'm like, if you follow the ball, defenders and pressure follow the ball. If you pass the ball and stay, there goes pressure. Now you're reading the game again. Now go find green highway and make it happen. So those are the big things for me is now trying to find those little cues or indicators where I can build off of what the kid does naturally now. I think there's a difference between skill and talent. Like your skill might be, I'm a great right-footed skilled crosser of the ball and I can get down the right side and whip a ball in. To me, there's also a talent. Say you're somebody where you're a very pacey forward. You might not be a great server of the ball, but you're a pacey forward and you can get us deep into the attacking third quite often. Okay, well, that's a talent. I'm playing to that talent. If I know deep in the game, we need to relieve some pressure on our backs, I might throw that winger in and say, hey, use your talent of being able to get us forward and get us in that attacking third so that if we're losing the ball and making mistakes, we're in the attacking third. We'll press and keeping the ball down there. We're not going to make sure that we're going to have it in front of our goal and panic when we're playing. So it's a lot of things like that, little decision makings. Are you willing to listen to your teammates, your coaches, ask questions? Love the question stuff because it shows me that this is on and this is ticking. I hate the whole, you ask a question, they bobble their head and you're like, is anybody alive? Is there a verbal response? And you put them out there and then they're not, just because they're scared to ask the question. So that's where we're at, is just the decision making. We push that a ton, that and positioning.
I love that, and I think that's a great, way of approaching things, because questioning techniques is so important, and I think getting those answers out of them and showing that they can relay and that they understand, and if they don't understand, you're going to pick that up in a response. So realistically, if they're struggling to say I don't understand, or they don't ask a question in front of a group, just by listening to their response, we can go right. Trigger, boom, they don't understand. How can we give them more information? So I completely love that. So what are your, say, non-negotiables then from your players on and off the field?
That's a good one. I guess for me, again, I'll revert back to the character side, because to me, I feel like that transitions into just more than just a soccer side, and that's what I expect of them as people. I like the challenging of coaching, where if a player challenges you with a question, it's you have to know what you're presenting to them and being able to say, okay, this is why I'm passionate about doing it this way. So I like when people challenge you with questions, but they do it in a respectful manner, because they're under the understanding of they want to know why, not because they don't like it or because they just want to challenge you. They're generally showing an interest of why I want to do this, because how does it impact certain things. So I like the inquisitive type of person. The how can I take this to the next level? One of the most rewarding times for me was a couple of years ago. I was able to watch a senior captain who was very, very quiet her first 3 years in practice start breaking down a drill for four freshmen plus herself and somebody else. She actually stopped the exercise. So I stopped what I was doing, started to film it with my phone, because it just absolutely made me feel very, very good inside, is that this person understood what we were doing, was taking the time to put their success and put it to the side, help the group, help younger kids understand, and she was spot on when she did it. That to me was the win. Like, that to me put me in the championship right there. So I don't care if we physically got there playing against our team. That to me made me feel like I reached somebody who knew it was more than just about themselves, and it was about the game. It was a female, so I love that we're growing the female game, we're growing female coaches. They wanted to do it, and the leadership was all. It was servant leadership at its finest. So I just, that was for me, that was the win. That's the people I'm after.
And so, say a college comes to you and says, right, Frank, what can you bring and what success can you instill in terms of the coaching program that we have here? Would you go about going, right, I've got XY championships, we've done this, and we've instilled foundations? Or would you flip it and go, this is the success that we've had here in X, Y, and Z? Or we've had so many players progress, we've done this, and then the championships. Would you go about approaching it that way?
I think it depends on who you ask, and I feel like you could shoot yourself in the foot. You might not, depending on who you're dealing with. I think there are some established coaches that are looking to bring on people where they want to know you have that tradition or success of on-field success. Then you have another set of coaches that maybe what they're after is something that their staff currently doesn't have, or something they don't do well. And so for me, I would sell the leadership side. I wouldn't even sell my X's and O's. I wouldn't sell my love of positional play or Coach of the Year award. I wouldn't share that. I would share, I made a leadership program throughout my years with coaching courses. I enjoyed it. I've seen it make impacts on past teams and on people. I think it'll make a difference. I feel like this can add value to your program and make it a niche and stand out, so people want to come here on top of what you already do well. That's what I would sell to them, plus what I would then grind and do for you as well. I don't know if that would help me or not, but that to me, I feel like with the right person that I also would want to work with, I feel like that's going to resonate. The people that just want the on-field wins, yeah, maybe I'm not the right person. I might be able to help them, but maybe I'm not the right person for them and their position. So yeah, I'm selling the leadership stuff, the individual development, the goal setting, stuff like that. That's the stuff that I really, really enjoy, that's engaging into soccer, but maybe it's not the X's and O's or the so-called player on-field development.
I love that, because one question that I had before it was, you've been approached by a college or a club for a head coach position. What would you bring to the role and what could you offer them? But essentially, without asking that question at the start, we've gone through such a great conversation. It's like, right, Frank would bring the people's success and how he would bring that forward and what leadership is there and how can he support them on and off the field? What are the good values? How does he create good people? How does he identify that? Or essentially, so you've answered that in terms of that sense. But then when it actually came down to going, right, what would success look like? You've already answered that. So then I'm building this picture and going, right, I'm going to ask this at a later point and go, right, is there anything, does Frank think different to me if I was, say, an interviewer? But it's been a very similar, thinking process in terms of that and where you're at. So say you're where you're currently at now and you've been there, say, 10 years and you've seen a lot of players' success and you've seen them come through. You're very settled, both personally and professionally. You're enjoying life. But a college comes to you and says, right, we want this. We want to have success. We want championships. You've got an abundance of resources. We'll double your money. Yes, some people might go on money and it helps your position, etc. Would you essentially go, yeah, I would go and see what success is in a different way? Or would you go, do you know what, I actually love what I'm doing now and I'm happy to stay here and maybe have the odd championship every few years? Or how would that look for you if that was the, say, be in front of you?
Yeah, I crave good people. I've gotten to the point where, again, what I wanted has changed. In the beginning, I would have said, without a doubt or hesitation, sign me up, put me on that ship, send me to that new place, let's win some championships. But now I've gotten to the point where, yeah, that's a nice goal and I would like that, but I want to work with people that I can learn from and I can also help. So like for me, I guess a long-term goal is, do I want to go to another country and work in a program there and learn how that culture and how that structure plays out, maybe go into the U.S. women's pro side of things, whether it's a youth academy or the pro game. That stuff really intrigues me, and I would love to work with other people that just have that sense of, we want to be adaptable, we want to be ahead of the game, we want to be on top of trends and be innovative. I think that's what I'm looking for. I want other people that want to try to be innovative, that want to expand and do exciting stuff together. That's been more of my focus. If I get there to the pro ranks or whatever, great. If I don't, it's just me being surrounded by people I enjoy working with and being around. I don't care if that's a junior college, a club team, a rec group, or if that's a pro facility. I want to be around people that are going to challenge me, but I also enjoy being around. So hopefully that'll come around at some point.
Because, some people say the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And, unless we have that time machine again, or, we've got some, looking glass we can go into and go, right, this is that and this is that, and then we can make that decision. We don't, and we have to rely on instinct and experience and that emotion and what we've been through before, or maybe an outlook of positivity, or being, maybe apprehensive. There's a combination of things when it comes into that. But the grass isn't always greener, even though they might double the money and so on. It might go more pressure, more analytics, more opportunity to be sacked. So you've only earned, the money that you would have made, say over a year where you currently are in 6 months, because you've been sacked. So you're in that position to recover for those other 6 months if you weren't having success. So, the coaching world is a difficult one, and the grass isn't always greener. But again, it comes back to that point in that full circle of the enjoyment must be there for currently where you're at.
Looking at the last couple of months, how many of our friends, and you could probably look back to, is how many have stopped coaching or have thought about quitting coaching? And at some point we've all done it as well, but there's been a huge drop or leaving or exodus of coaches lately. And I think a lot of it's come down to is that pressure and stress of trying to connect with the kid, but then also the pressure of the schools that are looking at sometimes these kids as money, because they're like, hey, we need the money so we can operate. If you don't win, you don't get the kids, we don't get the money, and it's a vicious circle that goes round and round. So a lot of people are like, you know what? I don't need this pressure. I can just go to the youth game. I don't have to recruit anymore. I still have my soccer fix, and I can enjoy it a little bit more. So it's tough. The questions you ask are vital. When I went from my last stop to my current stop now from a coaching standpoint, is to go back to what you're talking about. It was all about the questions I asked. I asked 0 soccer questions. I asked, do you enjoy working here? Do you enjoy the people that you're working with? How many times in the last week have you been told, are you okay? You're doing a great job. Those are the things that have been more important to me than how does your school support soccer? Do they give you all the equipment? Do you have a locker room? That I can deal with. The other stuff I can't deal with if you're not going to have the support that you need. It's tough to build a program wherever you go with that type of situation. So I think that's the biggest thing is the questions you ask. They have to align with what you want to do. Otherwise, take the wins out of it. That enjoyment you and I were talking about, that's going out the window real quick if you're not around a place that's going to support you and enjoy your presence being there. And again, I know it's easier said than done because people keep coaches based off of wins and losses at the higher records, but that's really for me what it's about. It's I want to be around people that are going to support me, talk to me as a person, understand where I'm coming from, that I'm not after just the wins and losses with it.
I love that. The people that you're around and enjoy your presence from an organisational view. Because, sometimes you can go to that other organisation, club and whatnot, but if you can be replaced by the next person and it's going to be easily done and that could be, say, a conveyor belt, then realistically they're not enjoying your presence because you're just there to do a job. And realistically, when you're doing that, you're not really then an asset to who you are, whereas you could be somewhere else. And so it's finding the right fit for you, finding the right people, making sure you ask those key questions. And again, questioning techniques are so important in what you're doing. But there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And I know, interviews, again, are much questions hit at us and what we're going with. But again, if we can hit them back with a question, we're going to have an all-rounded interview, and we have to find out whether it's going to work for us as well, because they're trying to see whether we work for them, but we need to find out whether they work for us as well.
You're spot on right there. As one of my good friends, when I was first starting out looking for my first head job, that's exactly what he said. He goes, you don't feel like you're feeling the pressure because you need a job. They're like, but don't just take the job because you need the job. Take the job because you want that job. Like, there's such a difference with that. You know what I mean? It's do the research and know where you're going. Don't just take it for the sake of, oh, it's a soccer job, it's full time, I'm going to love it here. Is like you said, you might show up there and all of a sudden it's not what you thought it was. Like, take the time to make sure you want that job, not just a job.
Absolutely. And obviously, when it comes down to that, you were an assistant coach before you became a head coach?
Yes. So where I played in college, I ended up sticking around. I was an assistant for the men. Left and thought I knew it all because, when you're young, you know it all at that age. So the high school team and the youth team failed miserably. Came back to my college, but transitioned to the women's side of things, just for a different perspective, and absolutely fell in love with it. And I was there for about 5 or 6 years before I finally went on to be a head coach at the previous place I was at.
And when you obviously, you've taken your time to find the right position and not just taking it for the sake of it, within yourself, obviously, you knew you wanted to be a head coach and get to that and be that leader. And you can hear it just from just listening to you. You are that born leader and you were going to naturally become a head coach anyway. But that's my taking from it anyway. But when you are, motivation can be hard to sort of manage them because you're very motivated to get to that point to be, I want to be a head coach. But if you're staying in an assistant coach role, knowing that you've maybe outgrown it already to move on, your motivation can then end up going backwards. But it's that fine balance then of going, right, I'm not going to rush this decision because I'm enjoying where I'm at, but I want to make sure the move is right. So when it came down to that and your motivation, was it a nice, easy balance for you, or did you have to manage your motivation? How did that look at that time?
That's a good and very challenging question. I don't know if I'll hit it with the answer, so please reel me back in if I don't. For me, it was in the beginning, I wanted to be the one. I wanted the challenge of calling the shots. And I think that's the difference. Is some people want it because they like the name and the role. I wanted it because I wanted to just see, do I understand this whole understanding of playing the chess match of tactics? Like, I love tactics. To me, I was never very good at chess, but with soccer and viewing it as chess, but I love it. Like, that to me is my bread and butter. I love tactics. So that was what I was engrossed in. I was just all about the tactics. And I wanted to see, could I do that on my own? And then once I did, I started to realize, I'm like, you know what? I can still add value and do things and be around our people as an assistant. So funny enough, before I landed the job that I'm in now, I applied for a bunch of different Division I jobs as assistants. And I had a good conversation with my wife about it. And she was like, well, are you going to be okay going from running a show to now not running a show? If it's ideas that maybe don't align with how you do things or how you want to do things. I said, that's a great decision. That's just a matter of, can you put your ego to the side and do that? And I think for me, it would be, can I find a person I really enjoy working with that can help get me to the next level, and I can also help get them to the next level as well. I can do that with a person like that. I think if it's somebody that's really set in their ways and they're just like, you're going to lay down cones and you're going to go do this, like, then I might struggle a little bit because what are you teaching me? Not that it's all about me, but like I want to be able to learn, but also add to it as well. So I have no problem if I was to go into an assistant role, as long as that person is going to challenge me, want my help, and also create that environment that we talked about that we enjoy being around. I mean, I have no problem being the number two if it's with good people.
100%, and I love that. And I remember when I first completed my C license, I was starting to look up how I can get into, say, academy coaching. And there was an academy, private academy, which started out, and they said, "Come along, trial out for the first session, see how it goes, and we can look to get you involved and so on." But I remember going there, and it was sort of a two-part session. They'd have a load of kids come in, and then they'd leave, and then a new set would come in. And all they had me doing was pumping up balls, picking up cones, following around. And I was like, right, I can understand doing that because, as all ex-professionals back then said, right, they had to clean the boots and so on. But I was like, but they got the train, they got the play, they got to learn. All they've got me doing here is cleaning balls and picking up cones, and I see how this is going. And then 2 weeks later, I got actually offered the actual coaching job with another academy because someone said, "Oh, I've seen you coach, come along." And instantly they took, and that was the most perfect decision. But I remember halfway through, I just put down the cones, was like, "I'm not staying here for this for another hour," and walked off. And I remember like the people who were trying to hire me just stared at me walking off. I was like, "But you've left me on this half of the pitch picking up cones while you're over there coaching." I was like, "This is not for me." And it ended up working out better for me, and just naturally by the gift of the world that happens.
Yeah, and I get we all have to do those jobs, the grunt work. Like I get you have to do that and be there, but I think there's also a difference of us understanding what your value and what your worth is. From your example, we were both just after something a little bit more. Like not that you didn't appreciate that and you knew that was needed, but you wanted more. And I think that's the part where you have to not settle for the job. You have to find the one that it's going to push you. Yes, you're going to do some grunt work, but we enjoy being there, and I think you made the right decision for what it's worth.
Of course, I look back with great fondness and knowing that I've made the right decision. So if, say, a big club or a big, high school or college came in and there was a head coach and they said, "Look, listen, Frank, we want you to come in, but you're going to be an assistant, but we want you to focus on the tactics and look after this, and you're going to do this while we do everything else operationally." Whilst you're not calling the shots, you're, say, delivering on the framework. Would you then give up what you're doing now for that in terms of, say, because you're that passionate and being there? Or would it be a case of I would struggle not to call the shots and do the tactics as well?
For me, I don't. It wouldn't be so much about, say, the final decision. I think what I really look for or crave is just whoever I'm working with asking my input or opinion. I think that, just having the opportunity to add to the conversation, I think, is the biggest piece that I'm after. So I have no problem if I was at number 2, 3, or 4, if taxes were taken away, but like I could somehow add to the conversation. I can be involved. I don't have to be the head of the table, but can I have a seat at the table so I know what's going on? Like that's important to me. So yeah, I think it has to come down to like also what's attractive to us, like what we want out of our careers. So I think there's other things like I never pictured ever that a leadership background or a leadership programming would make an impact, be important, or something that I enjoy doing. I have found over the last 2-3 years that I've really enjoyed that, and it's taken my coaching and what I put into my teams in such a very different direction that it showed me that stuff's okay. Like it's not all about being the number one. You don't have to be the manager, the top dog. Like your role's still important. You can still have enjoyment and add an impact and value to what you do. So I guess that's what I'm after.
And when you first started coaching, did you set yourself an ultimate goal to go, I want to be like national team or head coach of college? Did you set that ultimate goal when you started coaching, or is it going, I was going to see where I was going to work out?
Well, a little bit of both. I'll honestly give you the continuation factor of that right now is when I was younger, yep, it was I want to go work with Barcelona. I'm going to be there. Didn't even know where I was going, first of all, when I was little. I just had, you had to have the shirt. You loved them. You saw them on TV. Didn't even know where in Spain they were located. As you get older, then you start to get a little more realistic. But yeah, I mean, that's the goals you have. I mean, in the beginning when I was doing coaching course, everyone was like, oh, you want to go be a D1 head coach. I was like, I want to be a D3 coach. And some guy actually got into an argument with me. Is why? Why do you want to coach D3? And I'm like, why are you devaluing the number? I'm like, I'm still going to be a head person in a head role. I was like, but at the time I wasn't ready for Division One. I didn't understand what it was about. Like, it just wasn't part of my journey at the time. But I think everybody had that as like, that's where you have to get to. And I was like, what? At the time, it wasn't my cup of tea. Wasn't ready. Didn't understand it. Wasn't there yet. But now, yeah, I still chase the dream of, and you still see people like I know there was a coach down at Stockton in New Jersey that's not far from us that he ended up being a part of Real Madrid. And now, granted, it was a short time, but hey, he got there. I mean, that always keeps that fire or that young boy goal and dream alive, I think, in you. So yeah, for me, it's I'd love to be part of a pro organization at some point, whether it's the youth academy or the first team, but and whether that's in the U.S. or in another country, I would love to get to that as a goal. But those other things have to line up for me. So I'm not just going to just dump what I'm doing now and just say that's it. Just from a money standpoint, I want to go because there's good people. I'm going to enjoy being there. I don't want to go there and all of a sudden I don't have a job in 3 months. Those factors add into it. My wife and her family and our families add into it. That stuff wasn't important years ago when I wasn't married. I was living like a bachelor or a frat dude in my own. You could do what you want and come and go. Now there's other factors to put into it, but I have that support at home. If the ideal situation came up, I'd have no problem talking about it and getting more ideas on it.
Well, who knows where it'll go, and hopefully all the good work that you're seen doing can be picked up, and it already is, and a great name. And I was very excited when you wanted to come on, and certainly have that because you bring a lot about you, and it's interesting to see where you are going to go and what opportunities might happen, whether it's in America or not, and. Again, the coaching world, we can go in with the greatest strategies, but who knows who might come knocking or notice or, want to add you to the coaching staff. So it's definitely interesting to what happens.
Awesome. I appreciate what you do. I mean, I've been following your podcast for the last couple of months here. I love it. Appreciate what you do. I think it's cool because you just get to learn and know about other people's experience, other coaches just as people. And then when you see them out recruiting, you get a chance to say hello. And they don't know who you are, but you get a chance to reference when you're podcast. So keep up the great work. This stuff's awesome. I love what you do.
I appreciate it. And, it's great to talk to you. And, it's actually a first because I've been able to actually interview a head coach and an assistant coach who work together. And there was absolutely great words from Courtney about yourself during that conversation. And it's nice because whilst we've had this conversation, I've sort of been able to fit what she said and you said together and also understand who you are just by not asking who are you, what's this about, and just going right, Frank's done this for me, and it's given an overall picture of who you are as head coach and how you support your staff, fantastic, how you support your players, great, what's your philosophy look like, wonderful. So it's all this great things which has been built up naturally, and it's not by people arse licking as such. It's by people going, Frank is genuinely this person. And when it comes down to coaching, automatically, as you say, good people, you've already hit all those boxes without us box ticking, which is so great. So, it's a big thanks to you and Courtney. And I think in the back of my head, as we've been talking, I've got another proposition for you, which I'll message you about later on. But, it has been wonderful. But a first, I love having a first. And, thanks to you and Courtney. But it's been great to have a dedicated episode to you. And, all this good person stuff, don't forget that you're that good person as well.
I appreciate the kind word, brother. I appreciate it. I've been blessed to be around a lot of good people, and you being one of them, Courtney being another, so I appreciate it.
It's brilliant. Before you go, would you mind if I hit you with some quick fire questions?
Go ahead, I'm all yours.
Perfect. Well, could relate. If you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
Oof, okay. Let's see. Challenging, caring, I think loyal. I think those 3 things come to my mind. I'm Italian. Those things always filter through the family anyway.
Hey, now you're Italian. I'm loving you even more. I've got family from Italy. They're from south of Rome, a little village called Piccinisco. So Italian heritage runs quite deep in my family, which is great.
Awesome.
Right, you might have already answered this, but if you could move to any country in the world, where would it be?
Whew, that's a tough one. I wanted to visit a lot of places. I think right now my heart is set on Sitges, Spain. It's about a half hour south of Barcelona. Todd Bean and Tovo are located there. I went out there the first time a couple of years ago with my wife to take the coaching course and fell in love with the area. It's a sleepy little beach town. When the course runs, it's usually in the off season of tourist season, but it's awesome. And you walk right across the water. The Mediterranean's right there. The culture's great. The people are great. I think that would probably be the first stop if I could.
Sounds wonderful, and hopefully it might work out for you. If you could spend a day with any coach or manager, who would it be?
Oof, I'm probably going to have to pick out Pep. I think I'd have a lot of questions there.
A great choice. If you could manage any player, who would it be?
Oof. I would love to pick the brains of Iniesta or Xavi from when they were at Barcelona. I think those two would be awesome.
Xavi is my all-time most favourite player, and the easiest way to wind up my best mate is saying that he is better than Zidane, and we start a full-on debate about it. Who was or is your role model?
That's tough. It's a couple. I mean, you use the family aspect. I vouch back on just because of the family values and how I was raised. So I think my mom and dad are big with that. My wife's huge with the sincerity and genuinity side of things, of how she treats people and works with others. And if I was going from a soccer standpoint, I think there's just so many. I don't know if I'd have a specific for you, but I think, that would be a tough one to choose from.
A great answer still, though. If you could go back to your younger self and there was two cards presented in front of you, one was to be a full-time professional coach and to enjoy a full career and see what opportunities rose, or be a full-time professional soccer player, which one would you have chosen?
Oh, the playing side's always been the long-term dream, but I think once reality hits and you realize you didn't have the same investment and focus as what you needed, nowadays I'd say coaching. I think, but the kid in me and the player in me still would say that playing side, man. If I could, I would have loved to play at that level.
I love it. Quite a lot of coaches that I ask this question to end up giving up the playing side, but I think everyone's got a dream, and if it was still there and you had the chance to go back, why not?
Right? As long as you can.
Exactly, and enjoy it. If you had the choice of taking any job out there which was presented to you, what job would you take?
That's a tough one. Actually, I think I would visit Barcelona women's team.
I think that would be great.
Think the way the style they play is what I like, and then it's on the female game, which I enjoy, which is up and coming and growing. The things that they're doing for the game is absolutely amazing. So I think that might be my first phone call.
I think that'd be great. If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
That's a great question. I feel like now maybe a sports psychologist. I feel like that's always been an interest or a love of mine, but I never followed it. So I think that might be a path that I'd really like to kind of go after and see what it's all about.
I love that, and I think if I was doing another degree or I could go in another area, I think psychology would be a huge interest of mine as well. And I think it's definitely growing and great to get into the minds of people, and especially as a people-minded person like yourself. What is your biggest pet peeve?
I think for me it's the response, I know. And it's funny because I was so guilty of this as a little kid, is when you say, example of your parents was telling you something, you're like, I know. My response is, well, if you knew, you would have done it. So I think that one kind of drives me nuts, is when you just kind of, I know. Like, I get it. You don't know what you don't know, but be open a little bit more. So that one probably drives me nuts a little bit.
I love that one. That's great, actually. If you don't know, then you would have, if you did know, you would have done it. I love that. What is your most favorite thing to do in your downtime?
I'm a beach and a pool person. If you could put me by something with a nice view and a nice water feature, and I could just relax and have my shades on and relax with a fountain drink in my hand, I think that'd be okay. I'd be all right with that.
Love that. And you could live off the weather here. It looks like Spain, where I'm currently at, out the window. And what is one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
I don't know if it's selfish or not, but I just love being tied into the game. I know it's about others, but for me, it brings me that sense of, I enjoy the sport. I was never ready to get rid of it. This is a way of just keeping me embedded in it. So for me, it's just keeping me in the game.
Oh, I love that, and that wraps up a fantastic episode and time spent with yourself there this afternoon, Frank. And I really do appreciate it, and it's been wonderful to finally chat to you and get those insights and those stories and who you are and what you do with your team. And I wish you good luck for the season up and coming now. And again, thank you from me, and take care.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the kind words and the opportunity. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
And you, absolute pleasure.